So just chilling now, and not exactly sure what I'm gonna say in the video yet. I've been doing impromptu videos on X and practicing public speaking, and I've spoke about the Mental Health Act a lot, and it's something that I was planning on talking about in this video, and I already made one video this morning talking about the court case that's in the Supreme Court of BC, talking about uh, deemed consent. It basically forced treatment of people diagnosed with serious mental illnesses that psychiatrists say, in their opinion, have a risk of harming themselves or others, and have researched in depth what harm might mean after immediately after reading like uh, that their criteria for detainment being well, okay, what's a harm, and thinking it's not well publicized what the courts have decided is a genuine harm, and uh, the first criterion for the mental health review board and for psychiatrists is whether or not you're a person with a mental disorder that it impairs your ability to react appropriately with others, and they say that how it's practiced practically in my impression, based on my own experience, and talking to other patients and speaking with nurses and doctors, is that if you're deemed to be slightly inappropriate in some scenario, then you've deteriorated, and you can be detained based on the social harm of your inappropriate conduct. And as far as mental illness diagnosis goes, there's no real standardized thing. There is the DSM-5, but doctors don't tend to follow it. And beyond that, there's arguments about insight that I think are interesting, but often used in certain ways to keep people down and to punish them in certain ways uh, for not wanting to take unsafe and ineffective medication that ruins their quality of life, or for any other reason, frankly. But thinking that there's a provisions in the Mental Health Act that get abused, and the first criterion about inappropriateness is one of them. And basically, in Winco 1999, it's a court case in BC. They say that the inappropriate conduct has to go beyond trivial or annoying type of conduct, and it apparently has to be illegal too, based in the reference from the what the judge cited, and copied into his uh, judgment or whatever, and thinking that yeah, personally, I'm being forcefully treated, and think that I haven't done anything uh, more than trivial or annoying, and I don't have a criminal record, and I haven't harmed people substantially in my mind, or even immorally, and think that there's a great harm in the treatment and the gaslighting about risks to society or myself, etc., in psychiatry, and thinking that I don't know, there's court cases that determine what inappropriate means for detention, and the doctors don't follow the provision, nor do the review panel offices. So why is that happening? And then beyond that, there's the court case going on now, where there's the deemed consent thing. As part of the case is whether or not you can treat somebody against their will. In BC, there's an act that says there's a consent to care act that talks about whether or not uh, basically people can be treated against their will, and if they have minimal insight into things, they can still deny it for any reason, even cancer treatments or vaccines or whatever. There can't be mandates towards it unless you're on the Mental Health Act, and that's a provision in it. So I think they should repeal that provision, section 2, that says you can be treated against your will, uh, even if you have insight into the medication and the treatment alternatives, and the condition itself, and alternative treatments. Or maybe I already said that, but And I think there's a couple other things they mentioned in the act, but like thinking those are like generally good categories towards like, I don't know, determining whether or not uh, people have like a better argument towards like denying treatment that like could be beneficial to them, and thinking the fact they like deny people the right to make their own decisions is heinous and wrong and illegal, I think, given charter rights. Like the charter right 7 says that people have the right to autonomy and liberty and right to life and security of the person, and says in accordance with the fundamental justice, and like beyond that, like I think like it's incredibly unjust how like non-criminal people are being persecuted by psychiatrists, saying like they've been slightly inappropriate, therefore they can be treated against their will, imprisoned in psych wards, put on extended leave, and like forced to attend appointments and injections and things. And I think it's a terrible system. And like I get the like we need to protect people, vulnerable people argument. Like I consider myself on the left and like am pro healthcare and governmentally funded healthcare, even though like I have not many health ailments previously in my life, and like felt like I was paying taxes into it, even though I didn't have like a big income or something. But like there's that, and like I don't know what else to say about it, but like basically there's like a prospects of harm that are done by the Mental Health Act. I was listening to stuff on YouTube. I could like switch to that. I'm not sure if I can screen share in here. I think like there's a YouTube rules around like copying content and things, but I think audio is fine. So like I was listening to Bernie Sanders today talk about mental health care and like mental illness, and he talked about addiction. And I thought I like paralleled some of the discussions in the press or the Canadian press, etc. And yeah, so there's that. And David Eby, the premier of BC, talked yesterday and was talking about the Mental Health Act revisions. And like I quoted him, so I could like read out my tweet about it. And before that, though, I'll say like Josie Osborne, the Minister of Health, recently said that there was going to be expanded Mental Health Act provisions, and like is wondering how it could be expanded more from like doctors that say you've been like slightly inappropriate once and don't want to take your medication, therefore you're sectionable or whatever. So there's that. I think this is still recording. I like exited out of the window, so I'm gonna like try and find the tweet. Then I'll read out my tweet. Yeah, I copied most of like EB's speech because uh, I like added punctuation to it. I think I was the first one to do that anyway, or at least for that section. And like this is what I wrote though. It's like wondering about journalism or something, or easy journalism. It's just one paragraph. Yeah, EB wrote, I don't, or you said, I don't disagree that done improperly involuntary care can be quite problematic. EB said while questioned about the Mental Health Act revisions, contradicting to an extent where he said, the act works, partly based on anecdotal evidence about a woman wearing a suit, then implying without the control, without uh, without out of control gaslighting about inside enforced treatment, people would be dying on the streets. So there's that. You could like listen to it back, and like, or I could like try and find sections in the part I copied and like punctuated. But like, I think that's like generally a true character of it. It's wondering about like truth and honesty in reporting about mental illness and about patients, and found that psychiatrists are playing lawfare games and gaslighting games to their patients, saying they have no or lack of insight when they have plenty, and like more than a lot of people, depending on like how you categorize insight. If it's not wanting to take your meds, then just call it that instead of saying it's insight into mental illness or whatever. And I think like the Consent to Care Act has good parameters around insight, and like there's uh, other things about it. I guess I kind of lost my track of thought or train of thought or whatever. There's like a could like play some of this uh, uh, Bernie Sanders thing. He's talking about like loneliness as an epidemic here, and I'll like try to go to the top of it, or like around here. I guess I'll play from. Then he talks about Joe Rogan says something, and then says 2 times speed. I guess I can slow it down. Okay, here we go. What jobs are they talking about? Is that like 45 minutes in the Joe Rogan interview? I was at a Subway, like, Subway had a $6 6-inch special going on, and, like, I, like, went by there today, and they didn't have the promotion on. I, like, stopped somewhere in the middle of the day, but I, like, had a sweet onion chicken teriyaki and, like, something I hadn't had in, like, a long time. It's kinda gross, and I think they changed the sauce somewhat. It's, like, gooier, I think, but he, like, pauses for a long time and looks at Joe, then Joe comments. So wondering about that, like metabolic health and like Joe's diagnosis, who I think's like on point a lot of the time and like a good podcaster and like improperly maligned, but like thinking that like I don't know, like your body and like yeah, health impacts your mental health. I think it's problematized or complicated by the fact there's directed energy weapons likely operating, causing changes in people's bodies and minds and cognitions, and then like but that's like a caveat or something. But then like had like kind of a gotcha thing about like antipsychotics. I was talking about the mental health act earlier in this. I'm wondering about like I guess loneliness and like metabolic effects and like and antipsychotics and like weight gain, like antipsychotics cause like lethargy and weight gain and essentially ruin your body, increase prolactin, etc., and brain fog. And thinking that like it's terrible for loneliness for like lonely people already lonely, then like they cancel your own mind, your own ability to think through the drugs, then ruin your body. And like wondering about like people who've been diagnosed late in life compared to like I don't know, people that have had like early intervention in their teens or something. I didn't get like diagnosed, and I think I was improperly diagnosed. I don't think like I'm truly a schizophrenic generally, and like even though I might be on the spectrum or whatever, but like there's that, and like thinking that I don't know, like there's like dating parameters of it or something like ruining your body seems fucked up to do, and like uh, yeah, there's that, and, like, worrying about loneliness, I guess, and, like, superficiality and, like, dating or something and, like, socialities, and, like, worrying about outgoingness, though, and depression in relation to dopaminergic antagonism, and wondering about, like, addiction, too, in relation to substance use and, like, parameters of, like, creating more dopamine to compete in the dopamine antagonism parameters, where they lock up your dopamine receptor with antipsychotics. Then like the only way out of it is to like agonize it with like speed essentially, and like thinking that like people would be better off like with a healthier practices than being stuck on drugs the entire time that mess with your body and mess with your mind, when like there's like other types of mental health treatment like psychotherapy and counseling that can go a long way in terms of like remediating delusion, or like providing people to talk to, especially lonely people or depressed people, and like thinking that like the frontline early intervention psychosis treatments of like antipsychotics cause a lot of harm, and they aren't commonly talked about. If you talk about them, they say you have a lack of insight. So I think it's a fucked up situation, and psychiatry is broken, at least in BC, or at least hospitals in the interior that I've been to, and like thinking that there's a lot of harm that goes on, and like people are like belittled, and like their opinions are labeled delusional when they're probable, and then like beyond that there's a terrible neglect in like treatment where they just prescribe a ton of antipsychotics and no other therapies, and like thinking that there's like, I get, to be fair, there's like it's like case managers and things that sometimes organize like activities, and there's like a gardening group or something, and like there's other stuff going on, but like I don't know, running about like loneliness in relation to like prospects of like basically putting people on antipsychotics and like putting them in hospitals, or which I guess are pretty social compared to like I don't know, like homes or something, or like or individual places, or like micro suites or something, because the rent's so high, and like the disability wage is so low or whatever. So I don't know. There's some stuff. I have like 17 minutes now. I could like listen to more of him. I could like, or Bernie and Joe, or I've got like probably an hour speaking in the last like 2 days or something on X, but it's basically it's like looking forward to like hearing what the judge has to say about deemed consent in that case, and like pretty interested to see like how the government rearranges the mental health act, or if they can in any way. Apparently they like put through a bill even though they're not sitting in parliament today or something, and like I also tweeted about like a money laundering bill. I guess retweeted a money laundering bill that was never enacted, but like passed third reading or something. So there's that. There's another thing, I guess, like, I don't know if I should note it, but, like, I participated in a mental health review board hearing, last week or 2 weeks ago, last Thursday, so, like, uh, there's that, and, like, I was thinking about emailing them. I was just gonna call instead, but, I could, like, try and, like, work through what I was gonna write in an email. They have, rules and practices and procedures, and, they talk about the very first point is that they want a fair, just, and accessible and understandable proceedings under the Mental Health Act or whatever. And like thinking that, like, I don't know, it wasn't the trial wasn't fair because the doctor was lying, and wasn't treating me with respect, and saying like basic untruths about my life, and like trying to label me as somebody that might be dangerous when I'm obviously not. So like I think it was a really cruel treatment. And then like basically there's a, I think Rule 12 was another one. Then there's the main point or whatever. Yeah, Rule 12 is participants must treat all persons in the course of the proceedings with courtesy and respect. I didn't feel respected there at all. Felt uh, harmed, harassed, and belittled, and uh, ultimately assaulted, or I think they served as accessories to assault and accessories to a kidnapping and false imprisonment. And I think it's really fucked up that they can like get away with their harm. And there's like basically no pushback against it. And like most people are like, yeah, let's lock up the insane and like anybody that like we disagree with or something. Apparently, but like there's that. But like anyway, there I can I'll search it I guess just so I can say it. I'll just say 14 because there's 14 days in this section. 14 days, and like there's a oral decisions rule 26.2 says the panel must provide written reasons for the determination with 14 days of the to the director and to the patient or the patient's representative. They haven't done that. It's been 14 days now. The place is closed. So like I guess I'll like contact them tomorrow and see why there wasn't a ruling or whatever. Or I guess there was a decision, but there weren't written reasons. I don't think I have any like there's I think like little repercussion for doing that. Maybe she won't get another job, the chair or something, or but like if I complain, but like I don't know. There's that. It's kind of messed up, I guess. I think she made the wrong decision, or the other two panel members did, like 2 weeks ago, and like they didn't have the right to continue detainment, yet they said they were going to. And the other thing is like the doctor hadn't interviewed me in the stipulated timelines. You have to observe or examine the patient. It was decided in Mullins, I think, in 2005 and 2008, and a court case. And you have to interview or observe the patient, and within 1 month periods of the 40 after the 40 or during the 48-hour certification or after it, I guess. Like additionally to the that there's like 48-hour certifications if there's a one note by a doctor or nurse, and beyond that there's a 1 month certification, and within that 1 month they have to interview or examine again. Then there's another 1 month one, then there's a 3 month one, and in the 3 month one they have to interview in the last month of it. So like the doctor failed to do that several times, or at least yeah, twice so far in this certification. Then like prior to that, uh, since uh, 2023 when he started, or started 2024 when he started treating me, like I don't know. I think he's failed at the recertification task like a ton of times and didn't recall me, but just wrote down a note after talking to my dad or something, which is messed up. And like maybe a judge would rule because he talked to somebody that I lived with, and he said that like I was argumentative or something at one time, and then the then I'm like sectionable. I think that's a totally fucked up, and like the doctors should have to observe the patient because they're prescribing medication that can fuck up their bodies. And beyond that, they shouldn't rely on hearsay or other people's conjecture or storytelling about their like their lives or whatever. So like I don't know. There's that. And like as far as the law stands now, based on the court rulings, you have to interview or observe. The doctor failed to do that, so it's like operating under that premise and thinking they're up the Mental Health Act, yet they're like still making me go through mental health review board hearings, and like they're forcing terrible injections on me and whatever else. So not sure what else to say about it, but like yeah, I guess I'll like call tomorrow and like tweet about like what they say about it. Like as far as I know, there's no real like precedent for it, where like there's been no written reasons in a stipulated timeline. Maybe I could like sue for damages in some way or something. Probably couldn't like might be able to get like a retrial or something. There's one provision where you can write in and like say like I think you should review your judgment essentially or your decision. So I was like thinking about doing that and like citing from the notes, making the argument I was like making. But like I think like I talked to a lawyer in advance of it, and he was like saying like they basically want to hear like you'll abide by social customs and like you'll take your meds and you'll admit the wrongdoing in the past and like then you have a better chance of getting off the mental health act than like being like this guy's fucking lying about me in public. You're gonna allow that to happen and this bullshit. This is abuse. And like I don't know. So like there's some stuff on the mental health act, some like kind of anecdotal stuff or like autobiographical stuff or ethnographic stuff or something. I don't know. But like yeah, it's like tweeting at N punked and uh, been writing on Medium too. Been like posting most of my writings on Medium. Like I guess other than the X stuff and using iNaturalist now too. But my Medium thing is 338123 or at 338123 and the under the screen name Pen and yeah, I've got like writing there and whatever else. So yeah, have a good night or day or whatever.